Good morning. So, today I want to talk a little bit about things that I don't really want to talk about in the workplace. And before anybody jumps to conclusions, it doesn't have to do specifically with this job. It's just things that I've kind of noticed working. And I also kind of, not going to lie, I cheated. I went back to see which videos were more popular, and this just happened to be one of them. So, I'm bringing this up because I have witnessed a couple of fairly questionable workplace conversations that have made me feel uncomfortable. And I take responsibility for not saying anything when they were happening because I probably should have said something. But you don't always know how to respond to this. So I figured I'd tackle a little bit about some of them. So one of the ones that always sticks out to me is, and I'm not going to name workplaces, but I was in this place and we were talking about, I want to say mechanics. I could be wrong. But like something along those lines. So like getting down and dirty and like doing a specific job. Now this person was kind of referring to it like only guys could do this job. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of women who can do this. I've seen women who are really interested in mechanics, and I mean, I was really interested in math. I could have gone to mechanics, and I still think mechanics are cool. That's just not my strong suit, so I didn't go into it personally. But if that's something I wanted to do, I definitely could do it. But their point of view on this was that we could not do it in the workplace there because we would be too big of a distraction for the men working there. And there were so many things about this that upset me. So there was another person there, and he tried to kind of de-escalate a little bit because he could kind of see where this was going. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to make a scene in the workplace. But I couldn't quite understand why that was even a consideration. And I've talked about this before because of the whole dress code thing when we take girls out of school because their shoulders are showing, or you don't like what they're wearing because it's too revealing. But we don't do the same for the guys. This was saying that women couldn't be in this particular field that was male dominated because we would be too big of a distraction. And she even mentioned that we didn't need to put the image of a woman on her knees in these guys' heads. And there was just so much about this that I just kind of like froze. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think. I just couldn't believe this has come out of this person's mouth. And I was shocked. I was just sitting there like completely confused. And I was like, I don't see why this... You're saying a couple of different things. One of them is that what we look like is a limitation to what we can do. And that is absolutely not true. Another thing that this person was essentially saying was that men can't control themselves and are essentially animals. So this is an insult to kind of everybody by this point. Now, I'm not gonna lie, like I've met a lot of guys that probably can't control themselves, but I've also met a lot of guys that can and don't really care, and they're there to do their job, and that's it. Like, they're not gonna be distracted because someone else is doing their job. And so this was really confusing to me, and this is one of the things that I don't think we should be talking about in the workplace. Like, I can understand if that's going to be your personal opinion. I'm not going to agree with it. I'm probably not going to support you in it, but that's still, you're entitled to your own opinion. But this isn't something you should be talking about in the workplace, especially as somebody who they weren't somebody's boss per se, but they were a little bit higher up, and people respected this person as like one of the authority figures. And to hear them say something like this, because what if a woman had come in applying for this job that was male dominated and she was really good at it? Were we not really going to hire her because she'd be too distracting to the other guys? Or were we only going to hire women that weren't, well, they weren't going to be as distracting? That is so wrong in so many ways. And I still, to this day, cannot believe that this person thought it was appropriate to talk about during the workday. how we let things like this slide is just really baffling. And I completely understand. I was part of the problem there. I should have said something. I should have told our human resources department, or told my superiors, or told somebody that I didn't feel comfortable having this kind of conversation in the workplace, because it didn't make sense. And if this person had anything to do with hiring, that might lead to sexual biases, and that's not okay. So that's one kind of conversation that, yes, I understand that we need to talk about more, all of these things in the workplaces, like sexism. That's the word I was looking for. Like sexism and all of these things that affect us. Race. And I'm blanking out again. Sexism. Sexual orientation. All of these things that don't have anything to do with how you can do your job. Like, the only jobs that I shouldn't be qualified for are things like being a sperm donor, because for obvious reasons I do not have the organs to do that. So that's the only thing, like those kinds of things that I shouldn't be qualified for. But things like a male-dominated field, like mechanics, plumbing, electricians, I should be able to do all of those just as well as a man, and should not be considered a lesser of a worker because I'm female. And so this conversation that happened was really very frustrating to me, and it was really uncomfortable. Which leads me to my next one. So I had a different workplace environment, or the same workplace environment. I'm trying not to make it obvious where I'm talking about. But there was this one workplace that we were having a meeting, and it was a couple different people, and one person needed to use the restroom. And this person just uses the restroom a lot. My assumption is just that they stay really hydrated. If I carry one of these all day, I'm more than likely going to pee like 10 times a day, because I'm constantly drinking it. But, so this person went in the middle of the meeting to use the restroom, and somebody made a comment that, oh, you keep having to use the restroom, are you pregnant? Now, this just kind of gets me going a little bit, because it's one of those things that I don't feel comfortable listening to, because it's another bias against a woman, because, yes, it is one of those things that people know that if you are pregnant, your organs kind of move around, your baby can sit on your bladder, and you feel the need to pee so much more frequently. Wouldn't you, if somebody just punched you in the bladder, feel like you needed to suddenly go to the restroom? So yeah, it is kind of fact, but it's also not something that you need to say to someone ever. Especially if you're asking if they are pregnant. Now, this person tried to defend themselves with saying that they had a personal relationship, so it was okay. However, I am not part of this personal relationship, so I don't want to witness this interaction. This sounds like something that should happen behind closed doors, or in, like, outside of work time, preferably, because this isn't workplace conversation. This isn't like, if they knew that this person was pregnant, they could probably have asked, do you need any accommodations? Did you need something more specific to help you along in your pregnancy? Or did you just need to be taking more bathroom breaks? Is that like, what do you need to make the workplace more comfortable for you? Now that seems to be slightly more appropriate, because you're talking about the workplace and any accommodations they might need. But if you don't know they're pregnant and they just need to use the restroom because they do, a response like, are you pregnant, is not appropriate. And it's already bad enough that in a lot of workplaces, women won't be hired if they know that they are either pregnant or planning to get pregnant, because in their minds, as a workplace, they tend to think that we're going to leave, or, oh, well, I'm only going to hire them for like a couple months, and then suddenly they won't be here anymore because they'll have our baby. And it's like, that shouldn't be consideration. I plan to continue working, hopefully, as long as I can, and it doesn't make me any less of a worker, and it doesn't say anything about my life choices other than we wanted to have a kid. I know plenty of women who got pregnant, went through their maternity, took their maternity leave, and then came back and continued working for years because that's what they wanted to do. but they might be overlooked for positions because they decided to have a kid at some point in their life. So when people start bringing up these kinds of conversations in the workplace that are fairly derogatory about women like that, it really gets me upset. And again, I didn't really say anything. I didn't know how to say anything because these were my superiors. I just kind of felt really uncomfortable and tried to just like de-escalate the situation by just kind of making a joke that people were always asking me if I was pregnant, and I didn't like it. And the reason for that isn't because I had to pee all the time. It was because I just gotten engaged, and it was a fairly quick engagement, and so everybody just assumed we were getting married because I was pregnant. And we've been together almost 2 years now, and I'm still not pregnant, so everyone needs to calm down. But these kinds of things make me uncomfortable, and which comes to my third topic, which isn't another thing that I heard in the workplace, but where I failed as another employee who witnessed this. We need to learn that it is our place to help these people, even if they're not asking for it per se, even if it didn't bother them per se. And it's not just the person who's hearing this or they're talking about, it's all the people that it could be later. We need to have these conversations, say, hey, that wasn't really appropriate for the workplace. Or, I understand that you have a personal relationship, but I don't have a personal relationship here, and so it just makes me feel uncomfortable. So this still isn't an appropriate conversation in the workplace. Or talking about that male-dominated workplace with the female who couldn't do it because it would be too distracting. Why should that be a consideration? Wouldn't it be just as distracting to have somebody, I don't know, who looked weird or who was overweight or who was buff or something that was just as distracting? They could have had, I don't know, those shows that have the guest mechanics that are celebrities or whatever. I don't know if I've seen a mechanic show, but those shows that have the reality shows that have a workplace, and Chef Gordon Ramsay will come into a kitchen kind of thing. Wouldn't that be distracting to the workplace to have somebody like that in there? And it had nothing to do with his gender. It had to do with who he was. So why does it matter what this woman's gender is? If they're going to be distracted, they're going to be distracted. But that's not her fault. And that doesn't make her any less of a great mechanic. All of these things we need to bring up and have these conversations with our human resources departments or with our superiors or with somebody we feel comfortable with in talking about to figure out what you're supposed to do. Because if we don't start to draw the line somewhere, they're going to keep pushing back. And before there's any assumptions made, the first comment was made by a woman and the second comment was made by a man. So anybody can make these comments. It's not gender specific. But we need to be better about holding ourselves accountable to make sure that we're not part of this problem that is holding us back as women in the workplace, or that is dismissing us because of life choices that we might make. I don't want to be judged because I'm a wife or I want to be a mother one day. I don't want to be judged because I have breasts or the way I look, and I've talked about this before. I don't want to be judged because of my appearance or my gender or my orientation or my titles. I want to be judged by my work ethic, by the jobs that I've done, the jobs that I can do and I will do. I want to be judged because I'm doing a good job and I can do this job that I'm applying for. So if we want to keep moving in that direction, we need to actually do something about it. Speak up, talk about it, say, hey, you know what, that wasn't really okay, or that's not good. And in my defense for the first one, I kind of did try, but this person obviously wasn't going to change their mind. So I probably should have told Human Resources about it, or tried to make it clear, or make an understanding that that can't be why you're judging somebody. And as far as having kids in the workplace, there are just as many people who are kick-ass parents and even better workers. Like, people who decide, you know what, I want to have kids and I'm going to put them in daycare, or I'm going to get a nanny and I'm going to go back to work and I'm going to do a great job. And they're good at their job. And yeah, they might need to leave work every now and then because their kid gets sick or something happens, or they're deciding to have another kid or their first kid and they have to leave on maternity leave. Doesn't mean they won't come back and do it just as good a job. And it actually comes up in a lot of things, like a TV show that I love to watch. It was a woman who she's got her doctorate's degree, she's working in pharmaceuticals, and she's developing drugs, and she's doing a really good job at making a lot of money, and then she gets pregnant. And she ends up having to go onto bed rest a little early because she's taken it too hard and things happen, and the doctor said bed rest. She was so worried that she was going to lose her job because of this, and she loved her job, and as soon as she had the baby and she was cleared to go back to work, she was back in the office and she was kicking ass and she was doing an amazing job. Being a mother just made it so that she had to take a little bit of time off to take care of that. And she's still an amazing mother, and she's still an amazing worker. That didn't change anything other than she might have needed a couple of accommodations. But that can happen to everybody. There are men who can get things like kidney stones and need to go to the hospital for a little bit. Or they get sick and just have to stay home. Or they have an accident, either car accident or they fell off a ladder at home because they said they didn't need help. Heard it happens. And things like this, that they just need to take some time off. It's not exclusive to women to need time off. People like to assume that because we chose to have a baby, work isn't as important to us, and that's just not true. So my challenge to everyone today is to try to make a difference in your workplace. Talk about this, share your stories, and I can see that we've got some people sharing their stories, and I really appreciate that, because the more we talk about this, the better informed we can be, and maybe we can try to change some stuff. There's some companies that are doing a great job, like my husband company, new company, old company, I don't know. He keeps getting bought out and I keep getting confused, but they have paternity leave, so he can take time off whenever we have our first kid and second kid and so on, however many we want. But he can take time off, and that's amazing and great, and I really appreciate that, because there are some households where the men are the primary caregivers, and that's okay. But we need to make it across the board, and we need to keep talking about this and keep sharing and know that we're not alone, and that this shouldn't be the norm and it shouldn't be okay. And when things come up, that we can change it, or we can speak up to human resources or to our superiors or to FEMLA and all of that stuff that we have available to us. We might actually be able to change, if not the world, our world. Thanks for listening.